There are many roads spoken in many languages, but one thing all roads have in common is that all roads lead to somewhere. In Switzerland, it's called Route and leads to the Alps. In Ireland, it's called Raithid and leads to Dublin. And in Germany, it's called Autobahn and leads to Berlin. But the road to adventure, intrigue, and excitement leads south of the border to Mexico, and there it's called El Camino, to the beautiful landlocked blue bay of Acapulco, the thrilling excitement of the Toreador at Mexico City, the beauty of the handcrafted pottery, the challenge of matching wits with the fighting game fish, and everywhere the dashing caballeros. Our story of excitement and adventure in Mexico begins with a fellow named Walt Connors, who had finally persuaded his young neighbor Larry to take his family and accompany him on a vacation, a plan met enthusiastically by Joy, Melanie, and Stephen. However, there was a slight problem, for it seemed that Walt wanted to head for the Florida Keys first, to fish with his longtime friend Chuck Schilling, and Larry wanted to head straight for Mexico. Walt made one last plea, and Larry agreed. Walt had talked so much about this pro that Larry wanted to meet the man whom Walt confessed was a better fisherman than he. Anyway, the family had never been to the Keys, and since they were taking their home on wheels with them, there was no need to worry about hotels and motels, a place for the children, and all those details connected with traveling. And so the road was leading them on to the promise of great fun and good fishing in Florida. Chuck had planned on Walt winning Larry over and was already pulling into Vista Linda at Big Pine Key, eager to see Walt again and to fish the Keys. The men lost no time the following morning, as Chuck was anxious to try out his new boat. This was to be her maiden voyage. Chuck soon took charge and issued commands for getting underway. Tackle was stowed aboard. Some fishermen say tackle is, well, just tackle, but not Chuck. No, sir. His rods and reels are as much a part of him as is his love for fishing, and are they handled with tender love and care. Larry watches all this with keen interest, for Chuck seems to be whipping that rod with more than just ordinary skill. He wanted everyone to know the feel of a fine rod, so he urged Larry to try it. Not quite right, Larry, old buddy. You need some practice. Let Walt try it. How about you, Walt? You're handling that rod as if you're beating a carpet. I'll take it back. All that's required is just a simple flip of the wrist. Minutes later, reels are loaded, and Walt and Larry learn that they're going to fish in a special spot that Chuck has fished for years. Anticipation builds, and a great new fishing adventure is about to begin. Everyone was impressed with Chuck's new boat. She seemed to sense it as she glided them enthusiastically over the water toward their first fishing trip. Chuck had carefully picked his boat with the same professional knowledge he has for fishing tackle. The boat must be dependable and fast and rugged, and this one filled the bill. Chuck knows these waters well, so there's no doubt that it would be a good day. Being an expert, in the true sense of that word, Chuck is adept at tying the lure. Wind it 8 times, then pass the end back through the loop, and you have a knot that no fish will break. And when it comes to casting, just look at that. Poetry in motion. Good retrieve. Chuck looked as if this very moment were his destiny in life. Strike, he's got one. How's that for action? It's a pompano. A real rod bender, take it easy now. Too fast a retrieve will lose him. Looks like about 4 pounds of fighting fury. Pompano is one of the most sought-after fish in the ocean. He's as delightful to eat as he is a thrill to catch. This sort of action will bring a smile to any angler's face. He's close enough now to net. Larry was learning a great deal from Chuck, and it was the first time he'd ever fished with a real pro. Well, Walter was, but then Larry liked to kid him about the stories he told. It'll be Pompano Amandine tonight. So far, no action for Walt and Larry, so off to find greener pastures, or as Walt called it, wetter waters. And before you know it, Chuck has got something that seems to be very enthusiastic and seems to have a good sense of direction. Anywhere but here would be a good place to be. Chuck seems to have a lot of friends in these waters, but then he has a way with fish. This is where we separate the men from the boys. And Larry and Walt, too, decided they have a lot to learn yet about fishing. The waters in the Florida Keys abound with good eating fish, and Chuck seems to bring one in every time he casts. Larry got a great kick just watching Chuck, the way he cast, the way he retrieved, how easily he took the hook from a fish's mouth. He even seemed to have a special language just for fish. But Larry wanted to get some of the action himself. Well, that cast wasn't quite like Chuck's, but the result was the same, and the thrill is just as great, be you pro or novice. Walt was getting about the same kind of action. The fish were hitting the bait as fast as it was tossed into the water. Chuck was also a bit of philosopher and said that fishing to him refreshed his soul, sort of like a spring thaw in a mountain stream. Seconds after Chuck's line flicked the air, he hooked another fish. It appears there'd be no need to exaggerate the amount of fish in these waters. Being good conservationists, our party believed in keeping only the amount of fish that would be eaten, so they called it a day. These waters had been good to them, though, and they promised to return again. Chuck was very happy at the performance of his sleek new craft, as the boat's performance is as important to fishing as the tackle itself. This one added to the day's perfection. That evening promised not only a delicious dinner while telling of the day's adventures, but they had the memory of a few big ones caught and the promise of bigger ones to come. During dinner that night, Walt and Larry talked Chuck into going to Mexico with them. When a man is full of delectable pompano amandine, he's vulnerable. The following morning, they took the boat out of the water and prepared to leave for that land of foreign enchantment, Mexico. Every year, millions of wheels roll under family campers and trailers along many roads to adventure, and many novel acts with fish and frying pan are recorded. But this trip promised something special. One more stop before entering Mexico to get the car serviced and check out the route. One thing Larry and Joy liked about traveling was the friendly attitude of the people they met along the way. As they were now just minutes from the border, hearts began to beat a little faster, for Mexico seemed to call out to adventure seekers. It promised the thrills of darkest Africa without the beasts, the Panamanian jungles without the poison arrows, Bali, Malaysia, all without the expense of getting there, and all just south of the border. Mile after mile slipped beneath their wheels, and before they knew it, they were entering Mexico. They received the official stamp of turista, and soon were on their way into the beautiful Mexican countryside, into a land of intrigue, excitement, adventure, and high romance. A land whose origin had been in antiquity, but a land where you'll always find a welcome amigos. Once in Mexico, Mother Nature seemed to have put on her best dress for the visitors. Their first stop, El Salto, the big falls. Hey, Dad, look at that. Wow! This is one of the most awe-inspiring sights in all of Mexico. Mighty and majestic, with embroidered patterns of tropical greenery on all sides. Here, as the sun struck the mist of El Salto, nature's paintbrush painted a portrait of sheer beauty. Walt began to get that funny feeling he gets when he's been away from his fishing too long. There's only one thing he likes to do better than fish, and that's talk about it. But fishing would have to wait. At El Salto, they met a young fellow from Scotland whom Walt called Scotty, and soon they were swapping stories, while Joy worked her usual magic with lunch. After lunch, a siesta, then to swim in the cool, refreshing waters of El Salto. Scotty was greatly impressed with Walt's mode of travel, A home on wheels, complete with shower, hot running water, toilet, and 2 beds. To Walt, the camper is king. There's only one other place he'd rather be, and that's fishing. How big are the fish in your waters, Scotty? Oh, come on now. The feeling is strong that when friendships are made while fishing, they last forever. They would be leaving Scotty the next day, but that night they listened to the chirping of the friendly Mexican crickets and the murmur of the wind in the trees as Scottish folk songs filled the air. The next morning, hearts were saddened to say goodbye to El Salto and Scotty, and as they pulled away, all seemed to have the feeling that someday they would return. Soon the caravan was headed toward Mexico City. Mexico is Tierra Caliente, the hot country, but in a pleasant sort of way, with temperatures ranging normally from 74 to 84 degrees. It's wild country, often unexplored, but promising gold, silver, jade, and even ancient cities where lie buried the secrets of the past. And so our caravan traveled through Mexico, through a Mexico that has but one ambition: to remain the Mexico that it is. Here the real Mexico can be seen, in the city of Victoria. Not old men by the roadside, sitting under a shady sombrero, though indeed those can be found. But Mexican people must be thought of as energetic in spite of the malice of the tropics. Mexicans are sun-seared, but by no means debilitated by it. And market day is as exciting as America's county fairs. Thousands of desirable commodities are brought by big and little faces, young and old, that seem to share that sculptured look, as did the Aztecs of so long ago. It is here that one can find an abundance of Mexican artistry, foods, fruit, pottery, and always Mexican tacos. The caravan moved along as if every palm and patch of Mexico had to be seen. They passed the Tropic of Cancer, soon into another Mexican village, Valles. Almost everything about the Mexicans' way of life, from birth to death, involves artistry of some sort. The most popular, pottery. It seems to reflect the spirit of the country. Here, black pottery makers fashion urns from volcanic ash clay. As the wheels glided along El Camino, the hum of the highway seemed to whisper, saying over and over, "Follow me to Tamazunchale, to El Tejon, San Vicente, to San Luis Potosí, and on to Mexico City, known as the City of Palaces." Mexico City is a blend of yesterday and tomorrow, with the present being a vivid, colorful panorama of artistic beauty, and where frescoes whisper still of those incredibly advanced early cultures, from the ornate Spanish colonial palaces built by the followers of Cortez, where flowered canals once carried traffic through the imperial city of the Aztec ruler Montezuma. And as they traveled down the Paseo de la Reforma, signs of a civilization that seemed to arrive late in history could clearly be seen. Here, mighty edificios stand magnificent and proud, not a replica, mind you, but excitingly original, and as colorful as an explosion in a paint factory. The whispered promises of El Camino were kept as they passed through this beautiful city, awed by the magnificence of the Palace of Fine Arts, and pleasantly surprised to see that Mexico had its shopping plazas also, and a huge discount house. And of course, the ancient Aztec pyramids that contain stories of the past far more exciting than the exterior surface seen here. For herein lie the feats of arms that marked tragedies and triumphs of a proud people of the past. The cry of "Ole, ole!" and the toreador continues the tradition that has long been the real excitement of Mexico City. That night, Walter promised to babysit while Larry and Joy went out on the town. And since they had eaten a rather late supper, a snack seemed proper prior to bedtime. The children said it was just like being home. The world is your own backyard when you take your home on wheels with you. You enjoy all of the conveniences, yet when you walk out the door, the romance of Hawaii, the thrill of Africa, or the adventure of Mexico is at your fingertips. And Joy, as long as she had these conveniences, didn't mind meeting new neighbors each day. A night on the town, But where to go? A difficult decision, as Mexico City has a great deal to offer in the way of fine food, pleasant atmosphere, and music. You get the feeling after seeing Mexico City that all those revolutions must have been in paint, since the city seems to be a masterpiece of art and color. The El Camino was leading the caravan toward Acapulco, but first a stop at Salina Cruz to fish. When God and Mother Nature finished creating this vast continent, they must have taken all the beauty and splendor left over and put it all in one place right here, in the midst of Mexico. The caravan continued, passing through small villages. Each had its own particular beauty to boast about. Larry had heard a great deal about Mexican blacksmiths and their rare talent for making the world's finest knives. In Oaxaca, knives have been made for kings and queens of Europe. These people are real artists, and their knives are extremely rugged and dependable. The road, after the twists and turns of the first part of the journey, was straight now, leading them to Salina Cruz. Mexico is a leader in the Spanish-speaking world, yet clings to its past, and rightly so, for it has a past to be proud of. After the fish were filleted, Walt found he had a companion for dinner. Joy and the children had eaten enough fish for a while, but Larry said he'd eat fish any time, especially if Walt would cook them. Walt kidded Larry that if he'd been Noah, there would have been 2 of every kind of fish in the ocean on the ark and nothing else. Next day found the caravan again headed through the rugged terrain that is Mexico, a land in which men have survived against heavy odds, such as cactus in the desert. And although Mother Nature has been good to this land, the thorny cactus can only be explained as one of her jokes. On to Acapulco, through calm but dramatic geography with a unique style for extravagant gestures, through a land rich in history and natural beauty. Mexico is famous for its tequila, and this is where it comes from, a small cactus seemingly inconspicuous in the vast sea of sand. These are the leaves of cactus, shredded and dried and eventually made into hemp for rope. Walter was never one to squander superlatives, not on dry land anyway, and this he agreed you should never do, for when you need them most, you will have used them up. But even Walt agreed that such words as magnificent and beautiful and breathtaking all seemed so inadequate, was spoken for the first time. The one who said it might well have been standing right here. Acapulco means cliff diving. Here is a sport where for just 10 pesos, 80 cents in American money, men dive straight down. Inches in either direction could mean instant death. Time now for fabulous nightlife, entertainment at its scintillating best. The following day, not 1 minute was wasted getting the boat back into the water. For this was to be the day of the big ones, the marlin and the sailfish. Chuck. And to Melanie and Stephen and Joy, other memories will live forever. the magnificent falls at El Salto, the intrigue and excitement of Mexico City, and the beauty that is all of Mexico. And as the caravan heads northward over the road the Mexicans call El Camino, they pledge to themselves that someday their home on wheels will again carry them south of the border, down Mexico way.